Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. Peter, on Monday we had this extraordinary development of the disclosure by one of the most repulsive human beings on the planet, Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, who we've covered extensively in the past. And the disclosure was that there existed a Signal chat group involving all of the most senior members of the Trump administration, and for some reason, Jeffrey Goldberg, not any other journalist, but just Jeffrey Goldberg.
I'm not buying it, but keep going.
Right, but so far, no other journalist has said, "Yeah, I was on this Signal." Yeah. But anyway, well, he showed in his article that dropped on Monday some of the conversations that took place. And then he claimed that during these conversations on the Signal chat room, there were highly classified war plans disclosed by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Now, Goldberg did not disclose those plans in his article. He said, "Oh, this is very classified. I would never do such a thing. This is exactly." As things turned out, Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, he's the one who set up this chat group, and he said, "Well, I have no idea how Jeffrey Goldberg got in on this conversation, but there was nothing classified discussed there." And Pete Hegseth himself said there was nothing classified discussed there. And so it stood from Monday, Tuesday. So we only had Goldberg's claim that there was classified information, because what he published was just simply exchanges of ideas among foreign policy principles. However,
then
within the last hour, Goldberg has said, "All right, well, you're calling me a liar. You're claiming that there were no defense plans discussed during this chat room. Here, I will show you the defense plans that were discussed in the chat room." So let's just go through what it is, because this is
and everyone, George and I abhor this guy. Okay, really, this guy brought us more hoaxes than probably any other single person. Okay, however, he is a journalist, and if you get a peek behind the curtain, it's fair game. It's part of the public interest. Okay, so. Jeffrey Goldberg and Daniel Ellsberg are kind of in the same boat on this one, okay? Right. So I do not begrudge him for publishing it. I do not.
No, I agree. I do not. Now, what I did begrudge were his claims that which he didn't corroborate. His claims, there were these military operations that were discussed here. But I think before we look at that, one has to then take an outside look. I mean, there are several aspects of this. But first of all, why were they using Signal? And they've been condemned for that. On the other hand, one has to say that the so-called, the SCIF, the highly secure, which they're supposed to be using. Well, Trump used that during his first term. They were not highly secure in the slightest. Everything leaked. The most confidential discussions, the most confidential information leaked within minutes to the New York Times and the Washington Post. Very embarrassing material. So I think the reason why they switched over to Signal is that they didn't trust the normal communications process. They knew that any discussions we have will be leaked immediately to the New York Times, and it'll be extremely embarrassing, as were the disclosures during the Trump's first term, like his conversations with the Australian Prime Minister, his conversations with Sergei Lavrov, and there were innumerable, and of course it led to his impeachment during a phone conversation, which is also supposed to be highly secure, with Zelensky. boom, it leaked immediately to the press. So you can see why they moved to Signal. They thought
that's why I think Trump does his most secretive conversations on the golf course where they're not eavesdropping on him. Before we go forward, George, Goldberg wasn't there by accident. I think Waltz put him there. I think he intentionally put him there because everyone, if you zoom out, go up 30,000 feet, there's no difference between Goldberg and Waltz. There's no difference between them. They're both surrogates for Israel. They're both neocons to the core. And what was stupid about it is not having Goldberg on the line is that he could somehow kind of seduce him, like we're going to bring you on the inside. What a flaming idiot.
Right.
Okay. Right. Because Goldberg doesn't care. He's, a Democrat, Republican. He's a one issue guy. Okay. And he hates Trump. Okay. So, as the resistance gathers force, if it eventually does, he wants to be leading the parade. So I think he was there by mistake. I do not believe that for a second.
Not in the slightest. I agree. It was deliberate. I'm not sure whether Waltz was the person who put him there. I mean, somebody put him there.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Maybe this guy Wong, who is Waltz's number two. He seems to have been in with all the Democrats for many years.
Maybe was his number two by the time we finished this.
Exactly. So he may be the person, or there may still be within the National Security Council these Vindman types, Fiona Hill types. They may still be there. But you're absolutely right. This is no accident, because it's not like, well, they invited a number of journalists to take part, because then where are the others? Why isn't there somebody, I don't know, Maggie Haberman or, somebody else? Why him? Why this one person? This person who we know, long track record of deep animus towards Trump. I mean, all of the fraudulent stories that he ran about the suckers and losers, the stories.
Russia.
Russiagate, big Russiagate. And then, the thing about how Trump is supposedly an admirer of Hitler's, he really likes Hitler, and all of this, which he drops before the one about the suckers and losers before the 2020 election, this one just before the 2024 election. And this story itself, he dropped one day before a big intelligence hearing on Capitol Hill, one day before.
One day.
So absolutely, it was.
And George, I watched part of it. Actually, I was watching it live in a taxi coming home from work, and it was just a humiliation ritual. I mean, geez. I mean, God. I remember the Watergate hearings. There was quite a bit of dignity in the air. This was just a circus.
Right. Well, look, the Democrats, they're gonna run with it. I mean, this is you drop a ball in their hands.
You blame them? Run with it. You fumble the ball and the opposite picks it up. Yep, absolutely.
But anyway, let's look at what it is that now the updated files from Goldberg. So here we have. Here's the original, where this is Mike Waltz setting up this group, and he's talking about this principals. It's principles. He misspells it, but I got so. And then he had my deputy Alex Wong is pulling together a tiger team and so on, and then. We have J.D. Vance, who I think the one person who comes out really well from all of this. He sends out this message saying, well, I'm out for the day going to an economic event in Michigan, but I think we are making a mistake. 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez. 40% of European trade does. There's a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. And he goes on, the strongest reason to do this is, as POTUS said, to send a message. But I'm not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. There's a further risk that we see a moderate to severe spike in oil prices. So he's expressing skepticism, but it's interesting how he's framed the skepticism. He says it's all about the Europeans. It's that somehow, well, it's not really about the Europeans. It's about Israel. But of course, you can't go into a principals meeting and say, well, why are we doing this for Israel? There's nothing in it for us. Most of our trade goes around the Cape of Good Hope. I mean, it doesn't affect us. So it's only good for Israel. So instead, he frames it as, oh, this is for the Europeans. It's why are we doing this for the Europeans? But nonetheless, his was the one explicitly skeptical voice. Ratcliffe, as we'll see, was also quite skeptical. I'm willing to support the consensus of the team and keep these concerns to myself, but there's a strong argument for delaying this a month, doing the messaging work on why this matters, seeing where the economy is, etc. And then Joe Kent, now he was there. He's the congressman. I think he's been on Tucker Carlson, but he was deputizing for Tulsi Gabbard. And says, there's nothing time sensitive driving the timeline. We'll have the exact same options in a month. The Israelis will likely take strikes and therefore ask us for more support to replenish whatever they use against the Houthis, but that's a minor factor. So I don't know what he's saying. The Israelis will likely take strikes and then more to replenish. I mean, I'm not quite sure exactly what he's talking about there. And then Ratcliffe says, from a CIA perspective, we are mobilizing assets to support now, but the delay would not negatively impact us, and additional time would be used to identify better starting points for coverage on Houthi leadership.
Coverage. It's all about public relations. It's all about how to spin it.
Yes. Well, it is an issue. I mean, is that they're attacking Houthis that nobody in the United States knows the first thing about. I mean, what the hell are they? The Hutus? I mean, they don't know what's the difference between a Hutu.
Do they wear hoodies?
Yeah, hoodies. I mean, whatever. I mean, who are the Houthis?
Yeah.
Well, they're in Yemen. Where's Yemen? I mean, it's like you talk about this launching against attacks against somebody no one knows about in a place no one knows where it is.
And then they show the spokesperson for the Houthi, and they'll say, "Well, is that an Egyptian guy, or is that our friend in Jordan?" They don't know. They have no idea.
No. And then Hegseth says, "VP, I understand your concerns and fully support you raising with POTUS. Important considerations, most of which are tough to know how they play out: economy, Ukraine peace, Gaza, etc. I think messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, but nobody knows who the Houthis are, but we need to bomb them anyway, whoever they are, which is why we would need to stay focused on one, Biden failed, two, Iran funded. So we just got to keep repeating this thing. Biden failed and Iran funded.
But what did Biden fail at? I mean, Obama bombed them. Trump bombed them.
Right.
Biden bombed them. The Saudis bombed them.
Right. And Iran funded. So it is all kind of messaging. We got nobody knows who the Houthis are, so we have to tell them, well, Biden failed, so therefore we need to do something, and then it's Iran funded. So this is the familiar messaging idea where the Democrats are very weak, and that we Republicans are really tough. I mean, of course, the Biden was weak on Israel. Biden was weak on Iran. Biden is weak on the Houthis. That's it, and that's it. Where we Republicans are tough. This is the most familiar, cliche-ridden idea. I mean, it's been around for decades. It's going back to I don't know where, going back to the 1960s and 70s. Somehow the Democrats are weak, Republicans are tough. There's no evidence for any of that. Just like Reagan was tough, Carter was weak. Actually, Carter was not weak. It was the military buildup started under Carter. Reagan just simply continued with it. But it's that for them it's all messaging, and it's the same message. I thought you were breaking the mold. I thought you were going to come up with new ideas.
Well, I mean, George, we said during the campaign, after the campaign, before the inauguration, we returned very often to continuity or change. Well, it's continuity,
Let's
everybody.
continue. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so that's excellent. And then it goes on. Waiting a few weeks or a month does not fundamentally change the calculus.
So what is the calculus here? I mean, that they never explain it.
No,
Why are you doing this?
that's right. Waiting a few weeks or a month. You're exactly, well, in a way, it's right because you're going to have the same
Yeah.
same problem in a month's time, 2 months time, same one, which is you have to try to justify a bombing attack, and then there's no justification for it. So you're absolutely right. If you wait a month, we're going to have the same argument in a month's time. You can't come up with a rationale. But this debate, I mean, we always have this. I mean, you go back to the Clinton days, where we got to bomb the Serbs. Well, is this the right time? Not, what's the reason for it? Well, I mean, maybe we can delay this a little bit. Well, I don't think we should delay. We should do it now. But no one ever says, what do you hope to accomplish by this? What goal? What U.S. goals will be accomplished by bombing the Houthis? The calculus. Two immediate risks on waiting. One, this leaks and we look indecisive. That's it. You go indecisive. That's always it. The credibility. As Kissinger used to say, American credibility is on the line. So it's credibility. We look indecisive. Israel takes an action first, or Gaza's ceasefire falls apart, which it already had. And we don't get to start this on our own terms.
Start what?
And what do you care whether Israel takes action first? Why does that? I mean, since Israel and the United States are joined at the hip, there is no daylight between them.
But the Israelis are going to get the choice targets.
Yeah, they get the choice targets. And it's, so you can see that they're trying to come up with some rationale for this. They're sitting there scratching their heads. None of them can actually come up with a reason for this. What are you trying to do here? And what's your basis of your assumption that this is going to work, that you're going to do, that this will achieve anything?
Well, there's one assumption that I think we can take to the bank, everybody. This is how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
Okay? This is how it's done.
That's how it's done. Yeah.
Look at these people. They're like blind kittens wandering in the forest. How do we sell this? What's our spin? Okay? We have to do it. We don't know why, but we do. We need action. This is how foreign policy is made in the United States.
That's right. And if we don't take action, we look weak. That's always the thing. So we have to take action because the media have already reported that we're going to take action. And if we don't take action, then we look weak and indecisive. So it becomes a circular argument. We first put out the story that we're going to take action. Then if we don't take action, we look weak, which means that we need to take this action. It's the perfectly circular argument.
Where is Trump in all of this?
I think that's a very good question. Mike Waltz was interviewed. We can take a look at that in a moment. So he was interviewed by Laura Ingraham. Laura Ingraham, and she, he was very unconvincing. He was extremely unconvincing in the interview, but she seemed to take that Stephen Miller, who was in on this conversation. Stephen Miller represents Trump, so that's but that is also another aspect of this, which is why are so many people involved in this conversation? Because Stephen Miller is here, and then
and his expertise in this is
exactly he's a domestic affairs guy. I mean,
domestic affairs guy.
Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, she's in on this conversation. Why is she there? Then Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and his deputy is there. Why is the Treasury Secretary taking part in this? Now, when you have these kinds of small groups doing policy, they're usually small. They keep them small for a reason. Because if you got so many people, you're basically just going to have pointless arguments.
Yeah, well, they said it was described as a Tigers meeting. This seems like a Cubs meeting to me.
Well, I think so. Um, but I mean, the more anytime, anytime there's any military action that's undertaken, usually the decision group, is kept very small. It's usually a very, very tight group because the more people you have, the more likely it is that something is going to leak. So I don't understand why you need a White House chief of staff in this meeting.
The greater likelihood was, well, I understood from that conversation that instead, what it is that it's open to interpretation. There's so many different views out there. Yeah. I'm sorry, maybe I'm really kind of naive and not up to speed here. But when the U.S. government is deciding to kill people that are not at war with us, they're not threatening us, I would have expected the president of the United States to be in the conversation.
Right. Yes. Well, I mean, I guess this is. I mean, the reason you have a national security advisor is he's supposed to coordinate all the agency opinions, and then he gets all their opinions, and then he presents that to the president. That's why you have a national security advisor. It's there, so he talks to defense, the state, CIA, and then you go into the Oval Office and you tell them, well, what's the consensus among the government departments? So I think that's the way it usually works, and that's why Walt set this up. Hey, this is from
yeah, but it's already been
in order
decided.
to deliver my message to the president.
I see your point, but it's embedded in this is that a decision has already been made. I mean, it's basically signing off on it. That's the reason why I made my point. But I see your point of how you gather intelligence and opinions. But this is pretty serious business.
It is serious business, but it's just that's always been the traditional role of the national security advisor. It's like he goes and gets everybody's views and then presents them to the president, so he doesn't have to go personally to the defense and ask their view or whatever. It's all given to him by that. But you're right. I mean, here it seems like they've already decided. So Vance chimed in saying, "I think this is a bloody silly idea," politely, and seems to be contrary to Trump's America First message. And then he realizes, well, I'm in a minority. So I'll say, well, I'll go along with whatever you decide. But nonetheless,
well, I'm sorry, JD, but that's not demonstrating leadership. I'll leave it at that.
Leave it at that. But it may prove useful to him.
Oh yeah, as everybody sharpens their elbow.
That's right. Interestingly, also, that the one person we don't hear from is Marco Rubio. Again, a remarkable silence. This is the Secretary of State, and you don't seem to have much to say on the matter.
I'm sticking to my thesis that he's the foreign minister for the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's interesting because, in a way, when it comes to the Western Hemisphere, Trump is pursuing a fairly conventional policy. So therefore, Rubio can be the tough guy threatening Venezuela and Cuba and whatever. That Trump is doing exactly what Republicans presidents have been doing for decades.
And to his credit, Marco Rubio probably can do it in Spanish.
Exactly. That's right. Anyway, and he goes on, Hexa goes on, we are prepared to execute, and if I had a final go or no-go vote, I believe we should. What a surprise. This is not about the Houthis. I see it as two things. One, restoring freedom of navigation, a core national interest, and two, reestablish deterrence, which Biden created. What deterrence? I mean, where's I don't get what is the deterrence? I mean, there was no attack from the Houthis. There was the ceasefire, and the Houthis weren't doing anything. They were observing the ceasefire. So what are you deterring?
And freedom of navigation, well, I agree with JD. This is not really a navigation issue for the United States. it is one, the Europeans should step up and take care of it, but they
Right.
didn't,
Right.
which is counter to what Trump has been saying all along about the lack of contribution on the part of the Europeans. But
Right. That's right. And then, but we can easily pause, says Hegseth. And if we do, I will do all we can to enforce 100% OPSEC, I guess operational security. I welcome other thoughts.
oh, he loves this little cosplay, doesn't he? He's like, I'm Secretary of Defense.
But I welcome other thoughts. So then Walt says, well, the trade figures we have are 50% of global and 30% of container. It's difficult to break that down to US specific because much of the container either going through the Red Sea still or around the Cape of Good Hope are components going to Europe that turns into manufactured goods for transatlantic trade to the United States. So he's trying to gain rationale as to why this is in the US interest to do this, because quite clearly the numbers don't suggest that there is any, in any way, the United States is suffering adversely from this.
Well, George, to be a bit repetitive, I mean, if this is really the Tigers and this is the head of all of the basically the collective intelligence community here, why? I mean, this looks like Wikipedia. I mean, I would have thought this kind of information going into the decision would have been like weeks ago and
Right.
building. But no, this is like, I got my finger on the button. What does everybody have to say? And Michael, well, 15%. I mean, I find it really astounding
Right.
that, so little thought has actually gone into this.
Well, it's very interesting because, who came up with this idea that we got to start attacking the Houthis? There's no urgency. There have been no attacks on American ships. There have been no attacks on European ships. There was a ceasefire. The attacks on the ships itself were actually quite minimal in the damage that they caused. So somebody came up with the idea that we need to attack the Houthis. I mean, they set up this group. I mean, the only reason for this group is to discuss the attack on the Houthis. And now, having come up with this idea that we need to attack the Houthis, they're desperately looking around for some justification. And they look at these numbers, and then the numbers say, well, there doesn't seem to be much of a justification. There's no real harm. They don't see any real harm that's come to the United States. And then if the Europeans really are suffering from some great hardship, then why don't the Europeans do something about it? If they're the ones who are suffering so terribly from these Houthi attacks, but they don't seem to be, and there doesn't seem to be any great urgency in Europe to do anything about the Houthis. So
George,
what is the point of this?
I fully expected that we would talk about this today. So as I am wont to do, I did a quick cursory review of media. Nobody in Europe is talking about this. Nobody.
No. Yeah, so that's Waltz. And then whether we pull the plug or not today, European navies do not have the capability to defend against the types of sophisticated anti-ship cruise missiles and drones the Houthis are now using. So whether it's now or several weeks from now, it will have to be the United States that reopens these shipping lanes, which of course are open. And the Europeans are not asking, we please do this for us because our navies do not have the capability to defend anything. So again, he is desperately looking around for the rationale. Per the president's request, we are working with DOD and state to determine how to compile the costs associated and levy them on the Europeans. So this is the idea. We're gonna do this. The Europeans haven't asked us to do this, but we're gonna hit them with the bill. Good luck with getting them to pay for this.
Maybe they're just this administration is mercurial. That's for sure.
And then Wall says, as we stated in the first PC, we have a fundamental decision of allowing the sea lanes to remain closed. To reopen them now or later, we are the only ones with the capability, unfortunately, from a messaging standpoint. We absolutely had to do this of horribles on why the Europeans must invest in their defense. So
it's really quite interesting. We should point this out for our viewers. Why are the Houthis such a pest for the United States, for Pete Hegseth? Because they're the only Arab country that stood up against the genocide in Gaza. Okay, they are the only ones that said we're going to something along the lines of right to protect. Okay, and when the ceasefire was announced, Trump's ceasefire, it all stopped. So
right.
maybe work on the ceasefire, and you save yourself a lot of time and money.
That goes back to the point that I started with, which was that they're talking about the Europeans, this and that, but the one thing they're not talking about is that this is about Israel. The Houthis are being very precise in their targeting. They're only targeting ships going to and from Israel. So it's nothing, but they want to make it, oh, it's about the Europeans, all the, the deadbeats and all the rest of this familiar cliches. But none of them, not once, as they say, we're actually undertaking a military operation on behalf of Israel, on behalf of a foreign country. And why are we doing this? If it's Israel's problem, let Israel deal with this problem. So that's why they're all stuck with this talking about the Europeans, because they feel comfortable bashing the Europeans. I mean, we can do this in a month of Sundays. You keep bashing the Europeans.
Yeah, and it's really unbecoming representing a president that believes in America first. That's why they won't say it.
That's right, exactly. And then Pete Hegseth, if you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again. And then let's just make sure our messaging is tight here. It has to be tight. And if there are things we can do up front to minimize risk to Saudi oil facilities, we should do it. And then Hegseth, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic, uppercase pathetic.
This is like the varsity girls volleyball team.
And then, but Mike is correct. We are the only ones on the planet, on our side of the ledger, who can do this. Nobody else even close. Question is timing. I feel like now is as good a time as any, given POTUS directive to reopen shipping lanes. So it's coming from Trump. Trump's given this instruction. So that's why they set up this group. It's coming from Trump. Vance seems to be distancing himself, at least in principle, from what the president said. But hey, I mean, if you think that's best, I'll go along with it. I think we should go. But POTUS still retains 24 hours of decision space. You just basically, you've kind of created this arbitrary 24 hours. And then Stephen Miller chimes in. And as you said, what exactly is he doing here? As I heard it, the president was clear. Green light, but we soon make clear to Egypt and Europe what we expect in return. So he is speaking on behalf of Trump. Green light, but we soon make clear to Egypt and Europe what we expect in return. Why Egypt? What's Egypt got to do with this? But we also need to figure out how to enforce such a requirement. For example, if Europe doesn't remunerate, then what? If the US successfully restores freedom of navigation at great cost, there needs to be some further economic gain extracted in return. So I guess you hit them with more tariffs. I mean, I don't know what else. I mean, the Europeans aren't going to pay for this, so you just hit them with tariffs. So anyway, that's Miller, and then Hegseth says agree, and then Hegseth team update, and this is the part that Goldberg added today. So this is the team update time now. This is 11:44 a.m. East Coast time. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed. This is on March the 15th. Just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch. And then 12:15 Eastern time. This is the plan. F-18s launch. First strike package. 13:45, trigger-based F-18 first strike window starts. Target terrorist is at his known location, so should be on time. Also, strike drone launch, the MQ-9s. 14:10, more F-18s launch, second strike package. And then 14:15, strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, pending earlier trigger-based targets. 15:36, F-18, second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launch. So he's giving, this is the plan. He's outlining the plan. This is still 11:45 a.m. So he's saying this is the afternoon plans. This is what we're going to do after lunch today. And then Waltz says VP building collapsed, had multiple positive ID. Pete, Kurilla, the IC, amazing job. So this is, to us, this seems incomprehensible, but it seemed incomprehensible even to J.D. Vance. It says, what? and then Waltz says, oh, typing too fast. The first target, their top missile guy, we had a positive ID of him walking into his girlfriend's building, and it's now collapsed.
Oh, so killed the girlfriend too. All right. So it's so cavalier. So cavalier.
Vance says, excellent.
Now, George, what are they doing? Are they, are they in the shopping mall and they're watching like who's next up? Okay, I'll be at the checkout.
Right. Yeah, that's a good.
Sitting having a cup of coffee, or even taking a bath, and you're like,
I don't know. That's a very good
It's so surreal to me.
That's right. And are these on government phones? I mean, presumably they're government issued phones that they're looking at, which means again, there's not real. I mean, if the whole point of going to Signal is well, it's secure, but I don't think government phones are secure. I mean, I'm quite sure they have there are people that the deep state has means of hacking into these government phones. Good job. This is MAR. The first time Rubio chimes in. All this time, Rubio had nothing to say. MAR. That's Marco Antonio. I don't know what first his middle name is. Good job, Pete, and your team. Michael Waltz. The team in MAL, Mar-a-Lago, did a great job as well. Stephen Miller. Great work. All powerful.
High fives all around.
High fives all around. Wow, this was such an amazing, brilliant maneuver. We hit something or other.
We hit a building and a girlfriend was killed. Yay!
Exactly. Wow. This is the brave, bold military operation.
I wonder how much
we bombed something.
How much did it all cost?
Exactly. Yeah. Great work. Oh, powerful start. Oh, it's powerful. Hex says CENTCOM is on point. Great job. All more strikes ongoing for hours tonight. Oh, thank God. So, we can rest easy. We're going to keep bombing, and we'll provide full initial report tomorrow, but on time, on target, and good readouts so far.
Yeah. Then after dinner, he watches Netflix. Okay.
That's right. That's right. And then Susie Wiles, White House Chief of Staff. Kudos to all, most particularly those in theater and CENTCOM. Really great. God bless. And then Steve Witkoff chimes in with his emojis, including the biceps. So that's the thrust. The updated messaging. And of course, the media, they're going absolutely insane. Oh my God, the horrific security lapses and so on.
Yeah, what about the dead girlfriend?
Yeah,
the security lapse thing is meaningless.
Meaningless. I agree.
Meaningless. I could care less about
I couldn't.
it. Okay.
No, absolutely right. Yeah.
But this just shows how the sausage is made and how cavalier it is and pointless, absolutely pointless. The object of doing it is the procedure itself.
Right. Exactly. And then they feel good about it, but they were feeling good about it because when they have exchanging, oh, this is fantastic. None of them had any idea that they've achieved anything. I mean, yeah, the bombs landed. Okay, well, okay. So what makes you think that this is some great operation? There've been bombs landing there since time immemorial. I mean, this is a regular thing. One president after another lobs these pointless bombing attacks, and I mean, and this is, I mean, this goes back decades. You know, I remember when Ronald Reagan was bombing Lebanon, and no one
Yeah.
ever even knew what exactly are you doing. Why are you attacking? Who exactly are you trying to kill in Lebanon? They didn't know, but you know, what does it matter? I mean, I mean, we're not Lebanese, and so what do I care? You know,
Well,
we killed Lebanese.
I have a question for you, George, and maybe it's unanswerable because we don't get it from what was written by the cast of characters here. Were they doing it for Israel? Was like my bit to help Israel? Do you think that that's what the is motivating? Of course, they want to please Trump. He's the president. He's the boss. But is this I've chipped in to save Israel, to protect Israel? Do you think that's part of the thought process, even if it's not overt?
I think I think it's so implicit. It's so it frames their worldview so profoundly that they don't even have to
Yeah.
spell it out. It's like when you work on some fundamental assumption, you never spell it out. I mean, because that it just guides you. So whenever they say the Houthis are our enemies, Iran is our
Yeah.
enemy, they don't sit there. Well, you know, why exactly is
Yeah,
Iran
it's like
the
when
Houthis?
the Reagan administration sent malware to blow up a Soviet pipeline. I'm sure they didn't have the same technology, but we're doing this against Marxist Leninism. They know it was just implicit that
Right.
this is they're the enemy and you have
That's
to
right.
deal with it. I
That's right.
agree with you.
That's right. That's right. But I think it is interesting from what we can gather here is that the idea came from Trump. I mean, they set up this team essentially to realize this Trumpian goal, which is to attack the Houthis. So it really wasn't, well, let's discuss should well, you know, about the advisability or otherwise of attacking the Houthis. Here, it's already implied that they're going to do this. And other than JD Vance chiming in saying, well, I think this is contrary to America first, we're just bailing out the Europeans. You know, he frames it in that way. And then Ratcliffe saying, I don't know, you know, I don't see any particular
Yeah,
disadvantages in just holding back.
there was no, it wasn't contextualized to the point where if we do X, Y, and Z, the outcome will be A, B,
No,
C, meaning
no,
they don't do
no,
that.
no, no. No, there wasn't. There was simply that we're going to do the attack. Should we do it now or should we wait? So that was pretty much all that they were discussing. I mean, now or wait? And of course, that's an easy argument. You know who's going to win that argument because they said, well, what's the point of waiting? I mean, in a month's time, we're going to have exactly the same conversation, and then we're going to do the same thing. So they
Or
said, we might as well do it.
maybe in a month's time you come up with a better policy, but I
No, no,
waste
no,
your
no.
time.
Heaven forbid. Um, Now the question is what happens now? So Goldberg wasn't wholly lying. I mean, there was detailed military operations that were disclosed in that message app. Probably it's not that big a deal. He just said this is what's going to happen, and so on. He didn't disclose the location of aircraft carriers or anything like that. But the point is that Trump doesn't really care. He's not interested in security and we're endangering national secrets. I mean, he himself has been pretty cavalier in the past about disclosing secrets, so he can't very well fire somebody for being cavalier about secrets. So, do you think there's going to be what's the fallout going to be?
I've been mulling this all day. Okay. Um, Trump remembers what happened with General, what was his first
Which one?
um, his first national security
Oh,
advisor,
Flynn, General Flynn.
Flynn. Is this like, this is a way to pick off
Yeah,
Waltz?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I think because of what you just said, Trump has a pretty cavalier attitude about all this. I'm sure he doesn't really understand the technology and he doesn't care. Okay. It's I think he's probably pissed off that the Democrats got a nice juicy bone to chew on.
Right.
But in a couple of news cycles, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
how many more articles is Goldberg going to write? Okay, and then you have the commentariat on the left. They're going to go with this for well, probably for a while. But George, you hit pay dirt. You hit pay dirt in the beginning. It's going to be somebody in that telephone call that's going to use it against somebody in that telephone call in the future. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Now that's very good. I mean, it is kind of interesting. Vance sets out his position. That's going to be, that people have noted that. Laura Ingraham noted that. We've noted that. Okay, that's in accordance with the principle of America first. So therefore, Vance is, he's a man of integrity. So who said Marco Rubio said very little, as Marco Rubio is wont to do. I mean, as on Ukraine, he has said very little. He's let other people do.
Well, I mean, but Marco Rubio will say, "Yeah, I was in the call, but I didn't play a substantive role. I was observing from above."
Right.
Something.
Right. That's right.
Okay. Does this show the incompetence of people? No, I think it shows how business is done. When I first came across this, I was, the first, this is incompetence, unprofessional, blah, blah. That didn't enter my mind at all. It just, what boggles my mind is that how cavalier policy is made in chat rooms.
Right.
It's amazing.
No, I agree. I remember Noam Chomsky was talking about when Ellsberg presented him with the Pentagon Papers. He was among the first people to see the Pentagon Papers. And he said, well, I found them really boring. Everybody else really found them interesting. I found them really boring because that's exactly how I imagine policymakers to make decisions. These are exactly the conversations I imagine they have, which is they don't care at all about the consequences for other people. They just think about what's politically advantageous to us. How is this publicly perceived? How are people going to interpret our actions? But the consequences of these actions on others, that they never discuss. That simply is not part of their lexicon. And so that's why Chomsky said, well, I find it really boring. And so, and that's exactly it in this case. Now the question then is still Goldberg. I mean, somebody wants to damage Trump. There's no way you can just bring Goldberg, of all people, of all journalists. I mean, you bring in Maggie Haberman or Peter Baker from the New York Times. Okay, you can see at least.
Why didn't you have Tucker Carlson?
Or Tucker Carlson, or some journalists. It's like, okay, bring them in. But of all journalists, you bring on Jeffrey Goldberg. That's somebody with a malevolent.
Yeah, but
intent.
with the exception of J.D. Vance, and Stephen Miller. And Stephen Miller is a psychopath in his own little category. Minus Miller and J.D. Vance, Jeffrey Goldberg and the rest of them, they have a lot in common.
They really do have them. They do. But Goldberg has a particular hatred for Trump, and I think there are these whatever you call them, the neocons, globalists, or whatever. They're absolutely convinced that Trump is a threat to their project. I mean, Ukraine, obviously, Trump's policy is a threat to their project. But on other things, other than Ukraine, Trump has been pretty mainstream. And we don't even know how it's going to go with Ukraine.
It's turning into a theme here, everybody, except for Ukraine.
Right.
We've been saying this over and over, and we have no idea how that thing is going to work out. I mean, to be perfectly honest, and George and I'll talk about it later in the week, I'm really skeptical now.
I am kind of skeptical.
I just can't see this kind of hodgepodge thing is going to work because the Russians are going to say,
right, me neither.
Serious.
Me neither. Yeah, I don't see it either.
I mean, yeah, freedom of navigation in the Black Sea. Yeah, well, who's against it? Okay, but does it change the conflict in Ukraine?
No.
Does it change your policy of arming and financing them? No. I mean, so
no, and
make my day, okay, please.
And even then, what's important is that the Russians have imposed certain conditions on the Black Sea. They just said, we're not
Yeah,
just
we've been there, done that,
we've been
George.
there, done that, but they're exactly so. We're going back to 2023, but this time the Russians are saying, well, okay, we'll discuss it as we did in 2022 and 2023, but this time you kind of have to fulfill your promises. And they say if you don't, then there's no deal. And
Well,
so
and that may be the Russian gambit. Okay, every time we deal with you, you have your fingers crossed behind your back. Okay, we want to see your fingers this time. Okay, I think that's the Russian test. See if they're actually really serious. Okay, I think that, and to keep the conversation going, as George and I have talked about at great length. I mean, Trump seems to believe an improved relationship with Russia can solve other problems. There's no indication from the Russian side that's part of their calculation. Okay, there's no indication of it here.
Not.
All right,
I mean,
I'm going to have to run in a couple minutes here. But,
okay. So
I think it's really. I'm
okay.
sorry, but I just wanted to wrap up and to say I think what's really important here is don't be deceived and have your attention drawn away. This is how it's done. Okay, this is how American foreign policy is done. It's amazingly thoughtless, okay, and pointless. All right. There was a leak, there was a breach, all this. Oh God, just calm down. Okay.
No, I think that's right, and I think that basically Trump has given the Democrats something. I mean, they have, with which they can now bash him, but there's a limit to what they can do with it, unless he decides to cut somebody off, either fires Waltz or fires Hegseth. I don't think he's going to do that. In which case, they can go on and on and on for a few more days, but eventually the story would just be exhausted. I mean, there's nothing much more you can do.
Actually, Pete Hegg said that he's probably the solution to this whole problem for Trump. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, and nobody knows where they are. So what's the big deal? In a way, that's going to help resolve this snafu. But I think it's just a blip. I guess what will be curious to watch is how far the Democrats will try to use this as a cudgel. I don't think it's going to go very far.
No, I mean, they can probably try to set up a committee to investigate this. I don't know if they're going to succeed in, well, we need to, inquire into it. They're going to try and get a special prosecutor appointed. I don't think that's going to go anywhere because they don't have a majority anywhere. It's a Republican administration. Republicans control the House and the Senate, so there's nothing they can do. After the midterms, if they do get the House, then I think they're going to revive this and set up all kinds of investigations into security breaches.
At
so
this
but
point,
they're going to have to wait till the midterms for that.
I think by then it'll be a dead issue. I just don't think Trump wants to give anybody up. I just don't.
So I don't know. I think he's learned his lesson from his first term. Anyway,
all right.
So this is very important. The tip jar situation. Those dogs, they look mean. I mean, I'm getting a little frightened. I mean, and that's saying something. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out. Everything into the tip jar. Everything for the dogs. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make. The more we can improve on the technology, and above all, we're going to come to some kind of an accommodation with the dogs, maybe set up a new communication system. I don't know. But remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.